Today we will talk on deconstruction and demolition. Demolition means tearing down or destroying or knocking down of buildings, roads or other man-made structures. If we see, then this demolition act is deliberate, hence different from disasters damage. It means that if damage is occurring due to natural disasters like earthquakes, then it is not considered as demolition. Demolition is manual, and manual includes equipment also, and not natural as in case of disasters. If we talk about methods of demolition, then the selection of method depends upon area in which building is located, adjoining structures, availability of equipment and expertise in the area for demolition, availability of primary building materials, purpose of demolition, disposal of debris. If we talk about demolition methods, then there may be manual demolition, implosion, demolition excavators or high reach arm, wrecking balls, selective demolition. So if we talk about the manual demolition, that normally now it is not carried. Implosion we will talk. Demolition excavators and high reach arm, they are now available. Wrecking balls are also not used nowadays, and we will talk on selective demolition also. Let us talk about implosion first. Implosion means sudden collapse. So implosion in demolition of building is actually controlled way of destroying it. A real scientific implosion happens when the pressure inside and outside of an object vary so much that the object is crushed or collapses in on itself. In demolition of buildings, the term is used for explosive demolition, though not exactly conforming to pressure difference principle. The implosion in case of building involves careful small explosions, making the building collapsing towards the middle as the structure collapses inwardly. Look to this building which has been taken from the site given. So implosion is basically collapse of building in which controlled blasting is done. This implosion is preferred for high-rise and massive structures like skyscrapers, preferred when a building is surrounded by other buildings, preferred when collapse is required within the footprints or near the footprints of building if space is available like parking or open space is available, preferred when demolition is required quickly. Principle is when the support structure of a building at certain point is removed, like columns, the section of the building above that point will fall down on the part of the building below that point. The explosives are used as the trigger for the demolition, and then gravity acts and that gravity brings down the building. Implosion means building materials forming rubble and causing sudden dust. Let us talk about high reach arm demolition. In this type of demolition, a high reach arm, also known as a long reach excavator, is used to demolish or tear down structures. It takes longer than other industrial types of demolition. Building is pulled down from top to bottom side, suitable for mid-rise structures. It produces less dust compared to implosion and less risky than crane and ball method. Deconstruction techniques can be applied along with the demolition. See this example photo of which has been taken from the site given here. This long arm is there, and then one operator can do the demolition work, and he is quite safe as he is quite away from the building which is being demolished and debris. There was another method called wrecking ball demolition, which was earlier used a few years back. In this, a heavy steel ball usually hung from a crane was used for demolition through impact. Impact was created either by dropping the ball like on slab or hitting the structure like on beams. It is normally not being used now much due to availability of high reach arm excavators. And this, you can see the photographs which has been taken from the site given. Let us talk about the selective demolition. A deconstruction technique is used first to recover usable materials. Materials which can be recycled are then taken out. Finally, selective demolition is carried out, also known as strip out. And this becomes important because then rubble is minimum, debris is minimum, and then the debris is not required to be transported to the dumping yards. So availability of less space for debris is required. It is gaining popularity because it allows reuse and recycle of the building materials. Selective interior and exterior demolition of wood, bricks, stone, metals, fittings, and other concrete and other materials, whatever usable materials are there, they allow for recycling and future reuse to recover usable, which reusable materials are called primary materials, and recyclable materials which are called secondary materials. The process is labor intensive, it takes time, and it is quite time consuming because first the materials are to be taken out, then only demolition can be taken. This you can see the example where reusable materials have been taken out, then demolition has been done. If we talk about deconstruction and demolition, then demolition is the tearing down or destroying or knocking down the structures, while deconstruction is the scientific way of selective dismantling of building components for reuse and recycling of primary and secondary materials. Demolition is quick, but deconstruction is environment friendly and energy efficient as it saves embodied energy of the building materials which are taken out, and also even it is water efficient as it saves water used in manufacturing of reusable materials. Method of deconstruction can be understood by comparing with the reverse method of construction. In the construction, we first materials are we place the materials, and then in deconstruction we take out materials in reverse way. So deconstruction can be called as scientific method of demolition. It is safe and economic. It is environment friendly. It is energy and water efficient. In the method, demolished materials are sorted out for reuse and recycling, and it helps in waste management. Deconstruction, if we talk for, then it may be non-structural part and what is called as soft stripping, and then structural part. Non-structural may include doors, windows, partitions, cupboards, flooring stones, appliances, electrical wiring, metallic and non-metallic non-structural items like from false ceiling, palmets, finishing and decorative items. In structural part, which can be recycled, may include slab, concrete of the slabs, beams, columns and staircases, etc. So materials from non-structural parts can be used in other works, and it is if it is found reusable, and from structural members recycling is done, and then recycled materials can be used. Deconstruction requirement, if you talk, then the second hand materials has to have a market and sellability, because it is important. Whatever reusable materials are obtained from this technique, then they should have a market and sellability. Then storage space is required, because they are to be stored somewhere unless they are used or they are sold. Then materials require removal of mortar and paints, etc., as they stick to the materials, primary materials, and may require small equipment and labor to make the materials received from the deconstruction usable. If we talk about the procedure, then we are to strip out materials of non-structural members and remove them with care, then sort out them in different stacks. Undesired components like fittings, mortar and paint, etc., are to be removed if required, and then we can transport them and then stack them or sell out and work out the economics if they are economic. If we talk about the structural members, then we are to remove the metallic items and brick partition walls if possible, and then removal of bricks and stones if they are to be reused, and then we can dismantle of RCC structures, and if bricks are not to be taken out or stones are not to be taken out for reuse, then they can also be dismantled, and then this what called a recycled aggregate can be used after recycling. Recycled concrete and recycled aggregate both can be reused. Removal of reinforcement is to be done at the site so that it does not go to the recycling yard, and in recycling yard we send only C&D waste, and C&D waste is recycled in many components like sand aggregates, recycled aggregate or recycled concrete aggregates. Scope of deconstruction, if you talk, then there is a large scope of deconstruction, as natural materials are going to be very costly now in future and scarce also, and deconstruction is environment friendly. Maybe in future rules are framed by the governments or by the countries for using materials obtained from demolition or deconstruction mandatory to some extent, and due to environment consideration in redevelopment projects. Thank you very much for attending. I am KM Soni, ADG retired CPWD. Thanks a lot.